Our mission at the end of the day is to support the industrial base, the supply chain. That's what matters the most to us.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better.
Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. I'm really excited to welcome back our great friend, Ron Angelo from CCAT. Ron, thanks for coming on again.
Great to be here, Ari. Always love coming on your show.
Dude, it's awesome to have you. I cannot believe that you're coming up on 5 years at the helm of CCAT.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm looking forward to talking about all the changes that we've seen, what CCAT is up to, the impact you guys are making, how the mission, maybe I don't know if the mission is so much has changed, but the delivery of the mission, the execution of the mission has changed, and what you guys have coming. It's been a great journey. It's been fun watching and playing, I think, a small part in it, but really watching you guys do it. But before we get to all that, I should start off with the same two questions, Ron. What do you make and why do you make it?
Oh God, we make excellence. That's what we make. We make people better. We're in the people business and we're out interacting every day. How do we make individuals better in the performance of their job? AKA, how do we make companies better? Yep. That's what we produce. We produce results.
And why?
Technology and training.
Why do you guys do it?
We have it starts with the team. We look at our mission and we look at our team and our approach to what we go after. I mean, you have a dedicated group of people that just want to advance companies. That's what they live and breathe every single day. Why do we like it? We see individuals, sometimes they're teenagers, sometimes they're well into a career. We get to look at them and say, you spend a week with us, we're going to make you a better person professionally. And then you look at what they can do and bring back to their company. It makes it all worthwhile.
Yeah, that's tremendous. And a lot of people have learned who CCAT is. And I think one of the big achievements that you've had over your 5 years is, I think, really getting CCAT more into the manufacturing ecosystem, into beyond sort of the view that it was just for, Pratt & Whitney or just for big companies, but really getting into the manufacturing ecosystem. But I still think there's maybe people out there that don't fully understand what CCAT is. So just frame it up really quickly. Yeah. What is CCAT in the sort of national context of manufacturing? And then, how does that translate locally?
Yeah, there's a few entities like CCAT around the country. We're that kind of non-traditional contractor. So we're a service provider at the end of the day. We're a nonprofit. We're here to serve the industrial base, particularly the small companies, those under 100. So we're ingrained in that manufacturing ecosystem now. And what we did is some years ago, so look, how do we remake ourselves? We're not resonating our message well. We're doing too many things. It's a classic business example of saying, let's do a lot less, but the things we pick, we want to be the best at what we do. We want to build our team around it. We want to build our programs around it. And every day, every hour of every day is listening to companies, listening to industry. What do they need? Where are they slipping? What are the challenges they have? And because we're a very agile platform, we can pivot very quickly, develop the right programs, develop the right approaches that we can then bring into companies, both from a technology standpoint and a talent standpoint. Right. So it's been an exciting journey, and the team really has been exceptional around that.
So, CCAT's, you'll be 5 years at the helm. CCAT's turning 20 in 2024. Just really quickly, how did CCAT start? You said there's other organizations like it around the country. Well, what was the genesis of CCAT to begin with? Why was it created? How was it created?
Well, there was some things, 20 years ago, it initiated out of the federal government, and it had to do with the offshoring of jobs, losing capabilities within our industrial base. Mm-hmm. And when you look at what's going on today, we're sort of fighting that same battle. How are we bringing back things? How are we onshoring? How are we keeping and maintaining some of that excellence that the U.S. industrial base has, but particularly Connecticut? Now we've got the CHIPS Act. You've got quantum computing. You've got AI. Whole different thing as you start looking at these digital technologies. But at the end of the day, what are we doing? We're looking at supply chain resiliency. How do we make sure we maintain the level of excellence, workforce,
so like competitiveness. So you're saying, so we're looking at 2004 roughly, government's looking around saying, crap, we're losing some of this technology battle, right? If we want to be in the manufacturing game globally, we got to have the technology to be able to compete globally with what they're doing. That's sort of the genesis of CCAT to begin with.
That's right. Exactly.
And then is it how is CCAT funded? So it's a nonprofit, you said. How is CCAT funded?
Well, we're not funded. We have to compete, regularly, all the time for programs. We have to get on federal programs, Department of Defense, Department of Energy, NASA. It could be a whole host of things. We are also pretty well placed with some of the best consortiums in the country. National Center for Manufacturing Sciences out in Ann Arbor, Michigan. There's many of these. So we're a part of these organizations. We're members of the federal institutes. How do you bring value to these institutes, and how do you get on these projects and programs that are usually quite extensive from a monetary funding standpoint from the government, but they're also lasting, meaning we look for things that are not transactional. We want to build up relationships throughout the industry, but also with our federal partners. So we look at programs that they're going to have a life to it. They're going to continue on for could be a decade or more. And when you look at where Connecticut sits, whether it's Pratt & Whitney making that F-35 engine, and now you've got Electric Boat and you've got the 1+2 subs going on. The work ahead is so extensive. And if you're in the right areas, looking at the digital technologies, particularly looking at additive technologies, looking at how we provide that technical training along with those technologies, it's a great spot to be. A lot of growth.
So when you talk about like federal programs that you're going after, what are some of those? Give us an example of those programs. And are you competing with private companies for these programs, or who are the other people you're competing with?
Well, we're a private company as well. So yes, you're sometimes, depending on the nature of the opportunity, that presents itself. So the Department of Defense will put out project calls, or they'll put up what they call broad agency announcements, all kinds of different ways that they may approach the industrial
And what's
base.
an example of a program?
Well, the most recent one you'd look at was from IBAS, the Department of Defense, for our Digital Thread Lab. That was a highly competitive situation that CCAT won. And we're the only designated digital thread lab in the country right now. So this is right on the hills, another week or two, and we're going to have that center fired up. An incredible experiential training center with some of the best-in-class technologies that need to be trained in throughout the Department of Defense, the defense industrial base mostly. And it's everything from the training on the softwares to working on the equipment. That was a large program. It was a $7.1 million federal grant. That's all public information.
Right.
And now we're in there competing for the next phase of that. So,
and the goal of that program is what? So,
well, we got to get butts and seats in Connecticut. I mean, this is the beauty of this. This type of, when you start talking about these kind of trainings, they really go throughout the whole U.S. How does Connecticut maintain its dominance as the place to go? You don't have to always be here all the time, but you got to come here for research and development, for technology development, for this kind of technical training. So people are going to come to this center, and they're going to get trained. They're going to go back to their companies. Hopefully, a lot of those are in Connecticut. I mean, that's what we want to be serving. But we have to serve quite a few folks outside of the state of Connecticut as well.
So the idea is that digital thread would be, some people could come to CCAT from anywhere in the country to sign up and learn what digital thread is and how to use it in their companies?
Right, all the different aspects of the digital thread. So there's a whole host of different softwares that need to be learned. There's different machine aspects of that. So you've got the machining aspect, the inspection aspect of it. All that has to be built in part of the training. All companies are unique. I mean, I don't know how many you've been in and out of, but it's a heck of a lot, maybe even more than me. And each of them has their own nuances. They have their own pinch points, their own challenges. How do we work with them, meet them where they are, really often right on their shop floor, say, how do we make you better? Because the company down the road might not have the same challenge. We've got to customize along the way, meet with them, each of them individually.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
So you're private nonprofit business looking at ways to help advance the industrial base, leveraging grants and other programs with private companies and from the government. So when you got a CCAT 5 years ago, what did it look like, and how has it changed in the last 5 years?
Oh boy, I like to not look back that far and say what did it look like, because it's daunting. There was a lot going on, and too much. Very very scattered. I think for the most part. I think if I spent a lot of time talking with folks like you, but talking to industry, and it was if I talked to 100 people, I got 100 different answers of what CCAT is. What is CCAT? What do you do? What's the value? How can you help me? And we took a couple years of really digging in, shedding what was not valuable, and then and really focusing on what industry needs. So we condensed what we were doing. We got a lot more sharper, in our messaging, and really started developing programs and great partnerships, by the way, with the state of Connecticut, of course, Chief Manufacturing Officer, DECD, and a host of others. And of course, our federal partners also really appreciated our level of focus. We're, the old adage of skating where the puck is going, we hit it dead on. And maybe you get a little lucky sometimes, but maybe you got a team that just knows what they're doing. And we knew where the digital technologies were going. We knew the value of the digital thread, starting with model-based definition, the design. We just knew the synergies between technology, understanding the technologies, but then, how do we train them up? How do we not have technology in businesses? It's just sitting there, underutilized or not adding impact or value to that company. And we were able to develop these programs really, really well. So, we're seeing really good impact, coming out of these.
So you talked about sort of arriving, CCAT doing a little bit of trying to be a little bit of everything to everybody, or maybe not having a laser focus. You did what a lot of businesses, strong businesses do, which is go to the customer and say, what do you need? And then figuring out how to deliver that. So I mean, what did CCAT look like from a just number of programs, technology available, and people when you arrived 5 years ago, and what does it look like today?
Well, if you look back towards the end of probably 2019 or so, we had less than 20 people, at one point, and today we're 40, and we'll be over 40 very, very soon. You had not even a handful of programs to over 50 programs, very, very diversified around industry segments. So the thing that the manufacturing ecosystem needs to understand is that you don't have to be a defense manufacturer. This is not about aerospace alone. This could be shipbuilding. This could be medical device. It could be automotive. It could be pharma. Could be, pharma needs new processes. Pharma needs automation throughout their processes. Hospitals. We're seeing customers coming in from all over the place.
Really?
Saying, hey, I see the processes that you guys have built out. Could they apply to me? Well, let's see. It's a heck of a challenge. Let's see what we can do. So it's about the process, and then how can we take what we did, those learnings, and apply them as broadly as we possibly can throughout the industrial sector.
So how much of what you guys are doing today, because I mean, having been to CCAT, people may remember we went on site and looked at some of the robotics you guys have going a couple different times. You guys have a lot of manufacturing heavy equipment on site, just computer lab too. So some of the soft stuff. How much of what you guys are doing is that hard, robotics, manufacturing, laser, 3D printing tech versus other, what you talked about, sort of process development or workforce training? How does that split out with CCATs?
Yeah, it's probably still heavy on the industrial part right now as people begin to transition. I mean, there's, as much as we've talked about Industry 4.0 for a long time now, the actual adoption is actually quite light, and we have to continue to move that through. Even though you and I know we're already on Industry 5, we're already on 5.0, sort of jumped over it right now. So, getting these companies to really be understanding, look, we know you've got to get parts out the door. So we can't just abandon that and say, hey, let's take a leap beyond that, because they've got to make a
they got to pay the bills.
So we are going to continue to do that, but the mix of equipment continues to change all the time. So what does industry need at this time? And as technology advances, because of the technology partners that we've developed, we can swap out technology anytime. And for instance, we talked about autonomous machining. You're going to see a fully autonomous cell at CCAT very shortly. That was not there just a few months ago. So you come in and all of a sudden 2024, you can be bringing us a part, bringing us a file, and we can show you all aspects of the digital thread and how to autonomously process that part all the way through with little or no human intervention. So we have to start.
And are people doing so? Like today, going back to like the question about the heavy machinery, how is that's still a big part of your business, is working on the machines and helping people adopt that machinery into their manufacturing workflow?
Yeah, because when you talk about process does start, when you think of the digital thread, it starts with the flow and capture of data. But you can't abandon the part, because it does start with design, but then it's got to go into production. You got to produce the part. You have to then understand how you're going to use the part. And it even gets down to the tail end with, when it's done, how do you dispose of the part? There's so many facets that go into that digital thread. So yeah, we're going to have to continuously, look at process, but process very often actually requires machining time. The part of the process is the actual machining and manufacturing of the part.
So how do you sort of close that gap? I mean, you've talked about, and we've talked about many times, like the adoption of new technology doesn't seem to be going as quickly as we'd like it to go. What are you guys doing at CCAT to help close that gap with folks? Like, where do you guys see the gap, and how are you helping to close it?
Well, that's interesting, Ari, because it's almost like a continuous improvement. You're almost listening every day. You're missing something. Is there a key message we're missing? But it's definitely a multi-pronged approach to that. And you can look at a top-down, bottom-up. There's times where the federal government is actually driving this, and they're currently doing that within the submarine industrial base because they have to. They've got massive amounts of industrial product that needs to be produced to get to 3 submarines. So you see those flow downs, which then go to the OEMs, which then get pushed out through the supply chain. So we see that well in advance, and we get to begin talking, communicating with the supply chain and say, we're not telling you need this today, but 2 years from now, your ticket on the bus is going to be taken away if you're not model-based capable, or you're not working on an additive approach to this particular part. So it's a different approach, very often of how we need to message to these companies. But de-risking is a lot what I do. So I want to, while we have the technical team talking with the engineers and technical staff in these companies, I've got to be talking to the owners. I've got to be talking to the folks that make these decisions and be able to articulate that ROI, how we can de-risk them adopting this technology, and really what it's going to mean to them in the short term. How do they get an ROI in this? What's the important to that?
And what is the answer to that?
It depends on the technology. Sometimes it's quite easier to see, because when you start talking about automation, for instance, you've got a workforce play as well. So while you're already saying, hey, look, you've got an issue trying to hire a few people in this area, we can automate this process and also free up some very valuable people on your team, upskill them into a much more valuable position for you, productivity. So you've got more productivity coming out, you've got more profit coming out, and we're really backfilling with technology in those particular tasks that are,
Can you think of an example, like obviously without maybe talking about a specific company, but could you think of an example? Because look, I'm sure there's people listening that would love to be able to do something like that, right? Because everyone I talk to is always concerned about sort of filling their staff gaps, and they're staring at, highly skilled, experienced people retiring every year, feels like. Sure. And then they're trying to either prevent that by getting them to stay longer, but it's only so long 75-year-old people want to keep working, right? Yeah. So how are you solving some of those problems?
Well, some of the simplest ones that many companies have started moving forward is just kind of a robot or a cobot, like a pick and place, where it's actually taking the materials, loading it into a machine. That takes a lot of a burden off the operator, and that's even an EH&S issue sometimes. So that's more of a basic one, and that's one that happens actually quite often. Others are now adopting automation where they could put scanners on these things, so you can actually be doing visual inspection on a particular parts. Those are much more common. But as you get really into autonomous cells, now you've got it all the way down the line, putting product into a machine, taking it out, moving it down to another cell, and all of this has got to it's got to be timed, it's got to be monitored, and now you're looking at pretty heavy duty systems.
Yeah, it's a bigger lift.
Yep.
So if I'm listening and I'm thinking, oh, I have that problem, where I got the staffing issue. I'd like to maybe take advantage of that. Do they call CCAT and you guys help them do it? Do they have to come up with the idea? Like, how does someone actually go and use the benefits that you guys could offer in this?
So companies will typically come to us saying they're having a challenge, but the fact is, do they really understand the challenge that they've got? So there is a level of assessment. We kind of go in there and spend a little time with the company so we can really identify what the issue is. So very often what they're saying, it's like, well, we need to start a little farther down the line first, because this is not the actual start of that particular challenge you have. We're all over the place, as you can imagine. So we've got folks out there talking to some of the manufacturing associations, spreading the word. We have the things going on, events that we put on, open houses to draw people, get exposure to what's going on. And again, the state of Connecticut has really led, I think the state's probably leading the way in the nation with the type of programs, again, to de-risk things. How do companies be able to access technology, learn about them through demonstrations and workshops, be able to access stimulus capital to bring the cost of adoption down, and then access training programs? It's really a quite holistic approach. So I really take my hat off to the state, as well as focusing on that and listening to some of our industry partners.
And do you help people walk through that? So just kind of getting back to brass tacks, do I just reach out to Ron Angelo or someone at CCAT and you'll help me identify where I can find the value, what technology to use, help me figure out which programs I could use to help fund it. Are you guys able to do all that?
We can do all that. And if the message comes to me, I can tell you what I'm going to do is just forward it. So you can, but we get it into the hands of the right people. Our technical team is really extraordinary. Again, not only their passion for actually helping companies, but they have seen everything, which is really interesting. When you talk about the hundreds, and actually it's probably thousands of companies now that they've interacted with, it's not like we're really seeing anything new. We've probably had some level of experience with a particular company that's facing a particular challenge. Not exact, but we've got some base experience. So yeah, it starts with a dialogue, and then our team will actually go to that facility. Let's see their shop floor. It's great to come up to CCAT, see what we've got, but in talking to a company, it's we need to know what they're doing, and a lot of stuff that we have for demonstrations and technology is not affordable. We can't say, hey, this is a great solution at CCAT. By the way, this thing costs $1 million. We have to find affordable solutions that make sense to individual companies. And obviously those need to carry much, much smaller price tags.
And so what size companies are you guys working with?
Well, we work with some of the largest global industrial companies all the way down to 10-person shops. But a lot of the programs, grant programs, training and such, are for under 300. And of course, you're probably familiar with that manufacturing voucher program. That's for under 100. So we do, our mission at the end of the day is to support the industrial base, the supply chain. That's what matters the most to us. Our learnings and our approach as we work with some of the larger OEMs and the federal is to really just learn, where's everything going? Can we really stay on top of all these things that are just over the hill? These aren't futuristic. And then be able to start developing programs and articulate these messages to the supply chain so they don't all of a sudden get hit one day and say, you're going to lose this business that you've had because you didn't stay on top of it. And they're like, well, we didn't know. Well, it's part of CCAT's responsibility to help them know that. Make sure that they're always knowledgeable of where their particular industry is going, where their customers are going, what are the demands. If we can package that the right way with our partners, then that's how we can drive impact the right way.
Yeah, sort of closing the gap, right? CCAT sort of sits between, small companies, and you hear it all the time, right? They're so busy producing what they have for today. And I don't want to take away from the continuous improvement they're doing, but it's really more just making what they're doing a little bit more efficient, not always having the time or the foresight to go, to your point, what's around the corner or what's over the hill. And CCAT's role, in your view, and what I'm hearing, is it's really about being the eyes and ears of over the hill. So what businesses need to do is engage with you guys to understand what's coming, and then you can help educate them on that and then help them close the gap between here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly.
And where are you finding, you mentioned the team sort of doubled in size in the last 4 years. And I know, to your point, you came in, you sort of said, we got to refocus. And as many places need to do to refocus, you got to take a step back, sort of shrink to grow. Right. So you took a step back that first year, and now you've taken a bunch of steps forward. Where are you finding these people to help kind of drive the mission at CCAT?
Yeah, we're recruiting every day. I mean, everybody understands their network. We're all over the country at different times. We have someone on the CCAT team could be putting on a program, a presentation, doing work in a facility. So we're all over the country. Either way, we have our eyes and ears open every single day. When we find somebody who's really cool, that's what we're looking for. Creative people, really looking to think outside the box, and if got some level of skill to them. And we very often find somebody, we'll create a position around them. It's not like, well, we've got an open position, let's just go out there and recruit. We do that sometimes. Other times it's just constantly monitoring your network, having those conversations. And if you get into a conversation with somebody that's pretty extraordinary, and you say this would be a phenomenal fit for the CCAT team, we'll start talking to them. We'll say, what do you want to do? Let's get some pen and paper out and start drafting a job spec for you.
Really?
We find ways to bring in really creative people. But vast majority of our growth has been around program delivery. So we've got a good handle on what we do on that large scale federal level and even on the commercial work, but it comes down to program delivery, getting people out of CCAT, including technology. We're now taking technology out of CCAT and bringing it to companies, going right to them. They're too busy.
Like what, for example?
We have an additive adoption program right now, and we also do this with automation. If a company is interested and inspired enough to say, you know what, I think I got to know more about this additive stuff, we've got a program. We could take a really nice additive printer, a Mark Forge, bring it to them. The engineering team brings it to them, shows them, sets the whole thing up for them, shows them how to use it. Also, we've got kind of a hotline where they can call us if they've got issues, and we get them to use it. Leave it there for a couple months and get them to understand, yeah, I can do tooling with this. I can do fixturing with this. It doesn't scare me anymore. It doesn't mean it's the right technology solution, but we just gave them enough of an insight. Now, to really help them along the way, maybe they need a metal additive printer. Maybe they need something else. But we want to, again, help them de-risk what's going on, get them to understand this is not that daunting, and there's a real ROI that you can have by implementing these technologies.
And put it in their hands,
Yeah.
let them sort of kick the tires, play around with it. You help them show the value with the idea that if they can find the value and see it, now you can help them actually get the product, get the machine or whatever into their shop.
And I tell you, Ari, the difference when they see it, when it's on their shop floor, when their team can go by and see it all the time, and the barrier that gets broken down has just been tremendous.
Much better than you think bringing them to CCAT. To see it.
It's a different element. You know, they probably have come to CCAT, they've probably seen a webinar, or they've done a demonstration, or they've been there for an event, and but you see when you get into CCAT, you're like, wow, there's a lot going on here, and it can get a little confusing at times. If we can take something specific and have an engineer actually explain this to them in their own place, the comfort level is so much better. So, you're talking about, I use that term de-risk in a really kind of fulfilling way from the standpoint of what we've seen by breaking down these barriers for companies. And even on the digital side, just being able to let them understand on their terms, in their businesses, how we can help them. So we want to do a lot more at CCAT, at our facilities, which is what we are doing. But the element of going to them, to the companies, has been really a differentiator.
How do you think about measuring impact? Because it just seems so lofty goals, really good ideas, right? De-risking, helping people adopt technology, but it's not. I don't know, just to maybe use a very simple example, it's not like building a house, right? Like there was nothing, now there's a house, people are living in it, and it's sort of working, boom, it's done. It feels a lot more nuanced to understand, is the technology being adopted? Are we actually using it to de-risk, right? It's a longer term payoff. Like, how do you think about measuring that level of impact so that you can be excited about the success and your team can be excited about the success?
Well, certainly getting the technology deployed and seeing that impact with the technology is actually in their business now. It's actually being utilized, and they're trained effectively to be able to utilize it. That's the first step, and that's pretty meaningful to get companies to that point. But I think what you're talking about in business, you have two things. Is it going to drive top line? Is it going to improve your process, drive productivity, improve your top line? It's going to help you land more business or keep existing business. On the other side, do we plug some holes as you're leaking cost?
Yeah.
On the other end, are we helping operationally as well? So when you look at technologies and we look at success, have we helped with the companies now saving time, saving process time, saving money, and on the other end, making them more competitive? If you're doing both of those, which is the goal at the end, then that's success.
And are you able to track and see that?
Well, these are private companies, so we do surveys and we go back out and we do ask them and we get testimonials. So we do have companies that have landed extraordinary amounts of business with the adoption of additive or just improvement of processes. Driving costs down are key because now you can bid jobs more favorably. You look like a better, healthier supplier. We have a lot of that, but we don't get the raw data because the companies.
No, they're private.
Private companies, yeah.
When you think about making more of an impact, what do you see? What's sort of like you look at your process improvement, right? What's sort of the gap to helping you that's getting in the way of providing more impact? Like if there's one thing you could fix that would say, hey, if we can get this done, we'd make even more impact than we're already making. What's that?
You're saying within CCAT?
You had the mission, right? To help drive us in the supply base. What's holding you back the most? Is it you don't have enough staff? Is it not enough programs? Is it companies don't know enough about you? Like kind of what could we solve that would make CCAT that much better?
Well, the awareness is always the key.
I can't
just punt that. I got to be saying you can't do enough to be out there putting on, participating in all kinds of different events. We have Eileen Candles out there. She's all over the state doing these things. But it's always the team. I mean, you can't grow your team effectively enough. I mean, really looking for those key people, particularly in how we approach training. So the talent and technical training side of things and the accelerator that we're now putting in place is really going to be a major differentiator for us, because now you completely have that link between technology advancement and training. This accelerator is going to be quite extraordinary. I'm looking forward to you coming over. And
I look forward to it.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about the technology, and I know you've done more and more and more with training, upskilling, and I think they're so tied together. I mean, we talked over the years about getting technology out somewhere is one thing, but if we're not using it, it's really not going to be doing its level best to achieve the mission we want it to achieve. So how much are you guys doing with training now? How much has that grown in the last 5 years from a focus of CCATs?
Yeah, I mean, we're nearing 50-50, but that will be our fastest and largest growing areas on the training side. That was something that we identified years ago, and it's not like we saw gaps in our universities or our community colleges or anything. It's just the nature of the technology that we're working with. The folks just aren't out there. They're not being produced. We've got to sort of homegrown them within the companies. So we talk first about kind of incumbent worker training. How do we take an existing workforce and make them that much better? How do we make an existing workforce more productive? That's the most meaningful for a company, and it's actually very short term. You could do some really good results quite quickly. And the other aspect is, how are you developing that next workforce? And by being on industry focused and really understanding what are those 3 or 4, we don't want to boil the ocean, technologies that will make the most difference to our Connecticut or regional industrial base. Focus on the technologies, focusing on the training needed specifically to utilize those technologies as impactfully as you can. We want to simplify. Simplicity, efficiency. We don't want people to say, you've got to sit here for 2 years. No, you need to sit for a week. In 1 week, you'll go back to your company a far more productive team member in 1 week.
And what have you guys focused on? You mentioned there's 3 or 4 items to focus on for training. What are those areas?
Well, when you look at the training, particularly within the Digital Thread Lab, there's a host of software, and I'm not the one to rattle off the software. So you've got Amy Thompson or Jackie Garofano that can certainly go through each aspect of those things. But when we look at training right now, thinking about automation, how do we make sure people are properly trained in the utilization of automation? The model-based definition, model-based systems are going to be key across all industry sectors. There is not an industry that is not. Well, they're already adopting it. The large companies are already adopting it, and we still have a huge gap between those folks and their supply chain, and the conversions that take place and the inaccuracies that take place when you've got those conversions, and that's got to go away. So every industrial company that we see is working on model-based definition, and how do we get their supply chain enabled? The U.S., not just Connecticut, has got to lead the way, in this. Our productivity will be driven up, that single source of truth. So now you're looking at, how do we produce a perfect part every time as efficiently as possible? Isn't that the goal?
Yeah, it's the goal.
We want
zero defects, right?
We want zero defect. We want perfection every time. And we want to have it at such an efficient process that we're maximizing productivity, profitability. And whoever you've got on your team, whether it's 10 people or 10,000 people, it's the A team. I mean, we need an A team everywhere. Every one of our companies should be aspiring to that. And we just got to figure out a way to help them along.
How has your role changed over the 5 years, Ron? Like, what were you doing when you first got here, and what are you doing today?
I'm having a blast. First of all, again,
well, you've been having a good time, I think, from the beginning.
I don't know. The beginning was a little rough. For me personally, it's been a great challenge, and it's been a great thing to really kind of take on. And developing the team is by far, something I feel really, really proud about. I mean, the team is just extraordinary, top to bottom at CCAT. You go in there as you probably have done. When you're running a company, sometimes you have to be an authoritative manager, and it's kind of like you got to just deal with it. And then you start being a little more collaborative. And then you say, you know what, I like this kind of leading from behind thing. and how, so that kind of journey for me, and seeing how the team has stepped up in the level of confidence, industry experience, along the way that the team has, I get to do the things that matter most to CCAT. I mean, I need to be out talking with federal entities, the high-level consortiums. I need to make sure we've got a sustainable, growing operation that's got the right vision to make sure that we land in the right spot in 2026 and 2027. So I'm always looking a couple years out. And it's really nice to be able to do that when you've got the team that can say, hey, I don't need to worry about every hour of every day because the team's on top of all this stuff. It's a great
That is a great place to be. Yeah, I bet. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
What did you do? I mean, maybe a good management lesson here. What did you do to get to that point? You know, because you, as you alluded to, you were not always there.
Yeah.
You didn't always have the luxury of thinking maybe even past like tomorrow.
Right.
So now to be 2 years ahead, what was the methodology that you kind of followed to get to where you were today?
Self-awareness. Every morning, look at yourself in the mirror and realize, I don't have this. I need other resources. I can't do this on my own. And how do I look at this structure and be looking at it 2 years ahead and say, okay, these are the pieces I need today. These are the pieces I'm going to need 6 months from now. And now all that's going to just marvelously come together and work the way it needs to work a couple years out. But, it's just a constant self-awareness check of saying, am I doing the best I can? Am I making sure that my number one goal is to provide? I'm a bottom feeder. I'm in the basement at CCAT. My job is to make sure I provide every resource necessary for every person on CCAT's team to succeed. If they succeed, our customers succeed. So I'm just dwelling on the bottom. I'm trying to figure out a way to make sure that all those resources come to play. Could be on the state level, the federal level, could be the commercial and consortium work we do. Again, though, when you look at the pillars that CCAT has and how we're really delivering on our mission, the team's extraordinary. I don't say it just because it's the nice thing to say. I say it because my time very often, I am not the most important person at CCAT. At CCAT, every hour of every day, somebody else could be more important. They're doing the most important task at any given hour of any day. And we have to respect every single person on the team, empower every single person on the team. And sometimes it's me saying, you know what, step back and let them go. Don't try to be on top of everything. And yeah, that took me a while to, be a little self-aware and realize just
let it be.
Back and let them go. And,
so thinking about your view 2 years out from now, what does CCAT look like 2 years from now, and how is that different from today?
I think we'll continue to do what we're doing, but on a much broader scale. So how are we delivering greater and greater impact in a broader regional area? Again, as a business person, I look at the activity that you do in the state. How do you maximize CCAT's activity in the state of Connecticut? But how we can really drive value is to say, how do we draw in others from around the country, the region and the country? So if CCAT is engaged with other entities in other states, we're still sort of that epicenter. You're basically looking and saying, we're a technology, let's say we're a hub. We're a hub in Connecticut for the manufacturing ecosystem. Well, I want to be a hub for the manufacturing ecosystem for the region in the U.S., and I want to do that with the right technology providers and the right team. So we have to keep growing our footprint in order to be a stronger entity and a stronger provider to the Connecticut industrial base. The more we do out, the more partners we bring in outward, the greater value we can drive to our own manufacturing community here.
So you're viewing an expanded reach, which will provide more value locally and allow you to get a broader reach nationally, or at least regionally.
Right. Yeah. And continue to upgrade the facilities, maybe a new home, maybe a little something.
Maybe a little new home for CCAT.
That might be interested in a little different type of brick and mortar. You never know.
Never know.
But the nature of the technology advancements will be extraordinary. And those are the ones that I should ask you about that. It's kind of your world that you live in, and say, as you look out with your company that you grow and you try to say, hey, I got to put a dart exactly in the bullseye, only it's 2027.
Yeah.
And you look at quantum and AI and these other things. How do you make those decisions?
Incrementally, Ron. Incrementally. Yeah. I think that's the piece. You say, to your point, where are you looking at the puck skating to? And I think you got to have like a few things which are the incremental, continuing to build on what we already know, right? So since you asked the question, I'll get kind of a little granular. Like we know, for example, like Azure Virtual Desktop using Microsoft Cloud, that's growing, and we're already seeing that happening, and we can project that. But you also mentioned AI. It's a little less clear where that's going to go. So you got to invest invest some time, but not as much trying to figure out, is there a there? And, you mentioned Industry 4.0, and we sort of maybe skipped it, or, it's hard to say exactly what that is. But, that could happen, right? I mean, this would not be the first technology in my world or in yours that it was touted as the next best thing. Yeah. Everyone was going to have it. But maybe it wasn't quite ready for prime time. And the way technology moves, by the time it is, quote, ready for prime time, you already sort of moved past it. So it never gets fully adopted. So it's a little bit, from my perspective, it's a little bit of saying, okay, I already know, I can already see things sort of happening, and I got to put some gasoline on that fire. And then you want to do, I don't want to use the cliche moonshot, but it's not even that really. It's sort of like a little bit of dabble in the things that may or may not turn into something. And if you see the spark start to light, you put more on it. And sometimes you go, oh, I don't think that's going to go anywhere. That's how I think about it.
Yeah.
A little bit of this or that.
You've talked to so many manufacturers, over the years. I can't even tell you the number. I have no idea how many you've done in the panels. And
yes.
What do you take away from them, for your business? You think about process improvement and
100%. But I think that's, one of the reasons that I liked having CCAT on so many times is I think that what I see from manufacturers, especially in the supply chain, right? So when we talk about in the supply chain, my view, what I see most of is, call it 25, 30 employees up to a few hundred employees. That's kind of where I see most of my engagement. And I just see many, many manufacturers, probably like many other businesses in this area, very much struggle between time and investment spent making sure I'm viable and efficient today and looking to the future. So, as we've talked about CCAT being able to fill that gap, I see it as being absolutely crucial that these manufacturers are out there talking to you guys to say, what is coming that I don't know about, and how can you help me take advantage of it? Because it is plain as day to me that there's not spending enough time thinking about tomorrow. Right. And it's hard. I mean, it is not easy because you have to keep the lights on today.
Right. Yeah.
And how do you think about tomorrow? And that's where I view CCAT as having a real advantage is, let CCAT kind of do some experimentation, and then I can go to CCAT and what are my peers doing? What's working? What's not working? And maybe to your point, CCAT put a additive machine somewhere and they found out, wow, this shit really works. Yeah. Then when I come and talk to you, you say, hey, here's 3 examples. You could try it. Now I'm sort of starting with a little bit of a leg up. Then I try it and I find another thing or two. And I see that symbiotic relationship. So that's sort of what I view as the biggest challenge is looking into tomorrow and how do you know what's happening?
Yeah, and really that's how we've really staged our growth in our team. We've got the folks that are working on this autonomous machining cell and all the algorithms and the AI and everything that goes with it. At the same time, you got an issue today, we can take care of it. We can get your model-based enabled today. We can get an automation deployed and understand those processes in your business today. At the same time, you've got that skilled group that's looking just over that hill. And how do you make a difference? And as an applied technology center, that's where CCAT sits. We have to make a difference today or in a very short term.
I agree, and I think just to put a bow on it as we wrap it up is just that the training is so important because technology does not operate itself. Mm-hmm. And if you don't understand how to integrate it into what you're doing and how to operate it efficiently, you're just never going to get the value out of it that you could. And that's, I think, the key. And so it's been great to see CCAT doing more and more with training because you said, applied. I'm surprised we waited to the end to get to it, but CCAT's an applied technology organization, and applied is the critical point. And applied means training. It isn't just putting a machine somewhere. You got to train people how to use it.
That's it.
Ron, it's been awesome chatting with you. Thanks so much. Congratulations on 5 years. We will absolutely keep tabs. Looking forward to what you guys are doing in the future. Happy to get the word out. You heard it here. If you have some technology questions or you need it, email or call Ron Angelo. He will help you find someone to get it done. Lord knows he won't do it, but somebody he knows will help get it done. Ron,
the right place.
Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks,
man. It's great chatting with you.
Great job. Thank you.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by CompassMSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.